Hi everyone. Let's start to know how to make a sentences. Sentences in English language might come as independent or dependent. Let's go how we know the sentences is independent or when the sentences is dependent. When a sentence can stand alone and present a clear thought, it called independent sentences. Mean when our sentences or when the sentences is having subject, verb, and object or complement, then we call them, this is gonna be independent sentences. While our sentences having a sentences which is not being able to stand alone, this is so important to know, being able to stand alone, and it requires another sentences to complete the thought presented, or the subject or the verb is missing. It means one of those two, if the subject is missing or the verb is missing, then this kind of sentences we call them dependent sentences. Okay, now we have two. We have independent and then we have dependent. Let's look how independent sentences is working. For example, I have a subject, I have the verb, I have the object. Or sometimes we could have, instead of the object, we could have complement, mean give us more information about the subject, what he's doing or what he did. Let's look to the sentences. For example, we have Azad is our subject. That is subject, it means it's here. Then is the auxiliary verb, but here is acting as the main verb. Then we have studying, which is an ing form because we have is here. But now it's look for this part, subject, then is, then studying for the final exam will be a complement for the subject. I have it here. If we look to the second sentences, let's look here. Do we have subject? Yes, we do. We have we acting as a subject. Then do we have verb? Yes. Celebrate is a verb, is a main verb which is action, then acting as a verb. Then we have nirus, which is the object. We have it here. Then we have every year is a time frame or adverb of time. Then adding more information to when we celebrate nirus. If we look here again, now my sentences here is independent sentences. Exactly same thing here, which is Azad is studying for the final exam. It's independent sentences, could stand alone. And in English, whenever we start a sentences, we have to start with the capital letter. If you look here, and then if we look here again, and then we end our sentences by a period, or sometimes they say full stop. Let's look to the second type of sentences. Here we have adverb, then we could have subject, then verb, then object, or could be complement. We call this dependent sentences. Let's look how the sentences is acting as a dependent sentences. If we look to the sentences, the first one, we say here, When Azad went home. Here, if we look at it, we see in the first, we have when, which is adverb. Then we have the sentences. If we keep it our sentences like this, when Azad went home, the person who is listening to us is waiting for us to give him or give her more information about when Azad went home. But if we have sentences like this, only look for this part. Azad went home. It's complete sentences, but without when, you have to take it out. Then we have Azad as a subject, went as a verb, and whom as an object. But unfortunately, if we write it like this, when Azad went home, these sentences need another sentences to complete the meaning. Let's look to the second sentences. We call this also dependent sentences. The reason because I have something in front of Azad, which is make the sentences not independent, cannot stand alone, because Azad wants to have high marks. Why he want? Then if somebody read these sentences to us, we still waiting for the person to give us more information. But if we have the sentences like this without because, if we take it out because, like this, then this sentence is wonderful. There is no problem with the sentences because I have the subject, I have the verb, then I have the complement. But if I have the sentences like this, for example, I have the verb, then I have the object or the complement, one of them. Let's look to the sentences. Went is the verb. It's action verb. Home is the object. Here we're missing something before when. Here we're missing something like here. So we're missing something here because we don't have the subject. And as we said it, whenever we start the first word in English, we have to start it with a capital. If we go to the second sentences, drink tea. Who is drinking? We don't know. Are we talking to somebody come and drink tea? We don't know. Then we're missing something here. And the front, there is no subject. Then we call this kind, when we're missing subject, we call them dependent sentences. Same thing here, we have it. Sam in the garden. We look at it, we have a subject, here's subject, here's the object, here's the complement, or sometimes one of them. Here I have my subject according to the formula. Here I have the object. If we go back here, if we look at it, we know the sentences I have to have subject, then plus verb. Sometimes we say if we have object is better, if we don't have it also, because sometimes it works. But here I'm missing something here. I don't have the verb. The verb is missing. That's the reason we call this as dependent sentences. Same thing if we look to the other sentences. We have here, after Sarah graduates from the university. We call this as dependent sentences. But we call here, independent. She is going to take care of the family business. This part of sentences is independent, and the whole sentences now is okay because this independent sentences supporting the dependent sentences here. If we look to the sentences here, Azad studies very hard every day for the final exam. If we look to the sentences until here without this part, Azad is the subject, studies is the verb, then we have the complement. If we have this sentences like this, I have to put something here to close the sentences. It means it's okay. In this case, this sentences is perfect. There is no problem with it. But if I have the other part completing the sentences, it give me more information about why Azad studies very hard for the exam. These sentences give me more information, which depend the sentences. As the reason we said, because we have here because in front of the sentences. If we have it like this, it's a good sentences. We have two ideas connected to each other. Sometimes we call those as a connector. How to make a sentences? As we know, sentences element should be subject verb. If we have object is good, if not, it's also no problem. For example, the subject could be a single word, be noun. For example, here we have Sarah, single word. Sarah is the subject. Then we have is the verb. Then a student is the object for the sentences. Or sometimes we could have more than one word, or the sentences is more than one word. For example, the administration fees, this is more than one word, it's 3 words. It's acting as a subject. Then here I have the verb, which sometimes could be negative. Then we have refundable, which is acting as the object for the sentences. Or sometimes we could have more than one word, or it could be determined a noun. Then we have one of the students. Then we go to the verb, wrote. This is the verb, I have a sentences. Then the story, which is the object for the sentences. Then if we have a pronoun, for example, he acts as a subject. Then met is my verb. Then with her in the cafeteria is the complement for the sentences here, which subject is he. Sometimes maybe the subject could be ing form or acting as a noun, which were ing. For example, here I have is. Then the rest could be a complement. Doesn't matter how long is the complement. And maybe with the complement, we could see some other sentences, maybe like this. It is also working as a subject, was as the main verb here. It is auxiliary verb, but acting as the main verb. Then in the past could be the subject as a clause. For example, where she lives. This is whole as a subject. Then we have is. is the verb, or the main verb you could say it, as the auxiliary verb acting as main verb, then my businesses with the object. And the verb, which is very important when we come to construct a sentences. It's important, and when you're constructing a sentences in the English language, is a word refers to an event or action or state. The verb forms a main part of the predict of the English sentences. We have two kinds of verbs. Could be like verb, like action verb, like this: teach, maybe walk, eat, say, touch. Or maybe it could be auxiliary verb, like here we have it, is. Or maybe here, because we have taught, has. And different kind of verb you could have it here. For example, normal physical action verb can be seen by others. I mean, people when look at us when we do walking, they know eat, action, say, action, touch, action. Sometimes maybe they are non-physical action. For example, let's say abstract verb. Be, want, care, contain, exist, need, cost, owe, seem. Like this sentence is Sarah seems to be happy with her gift. It's a good sentence. We have a subject, we have a verb, we have the complement. Or maybe it could be possessions verb, possessing something, or own, or belong. Sardar possesses 2 big houses. I have a subject, I have the verb, then I have the object here. Or could be an emotional verbs. I mean, only emotionally we could see it. For example, like love, hate, dislike, fear, envy, mind. If we look at this sentences, it's a good sentences. Because you have children, we have fear, we have seen, wild animals. Children is acting as a subject of the sentences. Fear, we have it as the verb. Then this acting as an object for the sentences. We have 3 kinds of verbs or forms of verbs. We have state. It means we're saying this, or could be an event, or could be an action. For example, Sam is a doctor. We're stating what is the condition of Sam, or what Sam is. Sam is a doctor. Here is subject, Sam. Here is the verb, which is auxiliary verb, acting as a main verb. Then a doctor is the object. We have it here. Could be, we said that verb could be an event. The accident is the subject. Happened is the verb. 2 days ago is the acting as an object. Or could be our verb as an action. For example, she goes to school every day. She, subject, goes, verb, to school every day. To school is a complement because we have preposition here. Some people they say, oh, this is object. Then we have to say object of the preposition. But I don't think that's correct, but it's better you could say complement. It's easier. Every day, adverb of time, how often that she goes to school. Or sometimes we could say we have different kind of verb. Sardar went home after the party. Or Sarah is the manager. You could say Sam does his homework, because this is doing some action. Or Sam has 2 sons, possessing. Sometimes you could have linking verb. Sarah studied outside the house while her son went inside. Could be an auxiliary verb. Azad is studying at the Hawk University. Or maybe you could have, in addition to the main verb, you could have an auxiliary verb. For example, adding more stress or making sure that the action happen. For example, Sarah is the subject. Does is the auxiliary verb. You could delete it anytime. But if we delete it, then we have to add s to the work. Then we have the main verb, and then we have auxiliary verb. And mazimol is the complement. Same thing here. Sardar and Sarah do have the final exam. Here we have do as an auxiliary. You could delete anytime. Then we have as acting as the main verb. Same thing we have it here. Has acting as an auxiliary verb. If we look to this verb, has is an here it is not auxiliary verb anymore, because here, for example, Sam has written 2 novels. Here is auxiliary verb acting as is auxiliary verb acting as a main verb, because here we have has, then we have past participle of write, which is written. Same thing here, have. They have. They is the subject. Then have is the auxiliary verb and also as a main verb here. Done, the past participle of do. Then we have their homework is the object. Sometimes we could have a model like working as a main verb. For example, Sardar might be promoted to the executive director position. Sardar might be promoted to the executive director position. Sardar is the subject. Might is the model, acting as a model here, and also sometimes a model is a part of auxiliary. Then we have be as main verb. Then we have promoted, which past participle of promote. We have 2 kinds of object. We have direct and indirect. We have some verb taking indirect objects and then some verb taking direct object. Or maybe sometimes taking either direct or indirect object. For example, here if we look at it, Sardar gave Azad $5. We say indirect object because we have another object here. Azad is the first object, then $5 is the second object. Then we say indirect object. Or sometimes you could have like this. Then either direct object or prepositional phrases with to. For example, you could say Sardar, subject, gave is the verb or the main verb. $5 is the indirect object to the subject Sardar. To is the preposition. Then we have asat. Then you could say the object of the preposition, or sometimes you could say the second object of the Sardar. Here we have it. Or sometimes we could have it verb taking indirect object plus either direct object or prepositional phrase with for. For example, those verbs buy, find, get, make, order, save. Those taken either of them. For example, Sardar bought Azad a cup of tea. We have Sardar subject, we have the verb, we have the first object, then we have the second object. This will be indirect object. Or you could have it like this. Sardar bought a cup of tea for Azad. Then we have it, the object or prepositional phrases with for. Then we say Sardar, subject. Bought is the verb, main verb, you could say it. A cup of tea, here is gonna be the direct object for it. And then we have the second object, you could say the object of prepositional. As we said it, we have subject could come one word, or subject could be more than one word, or it could be indirect, or it could be more than one word, or it could be ing form, or it could be clauses. Same thing with the object. Object could be only one letter, or the object could be more than one letter. Her sister could be one person but two words. Or you could have a sentences taking indirect object. If we look here, we have subject, this is the subject, this is the verb, this is the first object, and then we have the second object, which we call it indirect object to Sam. Then him here will act as a first object. If we look to this sentences, same thing, we have it. The police is the subject, right, is the verb. The prisoner is the first object. Then we have the second object, which is his right. It's going to be indirect object to this. Maybe you could have both. We have indirect or direct object. The mother always gives the boy too many chores. For example, mother is the subject, then gives is the verb. The toy is the direct object to the mother, but too many chores will be the indirect object to the mother. Sometimes maybe you could have direct object prepositional phrases. For example, the mother always gives too many chores to the boy. Same thing, we have it here, subject, then gives the verb, then we have direct object, then we have prepositional phrase, which is to the boy. Then object of preposition. Here we have Azad lives on the east side of the city. Azad is the subject, lives is the verb, on the east side of the city is the object of the preposition on. Maybe sometime we have WH clause acting as an object for the sentences. For example, Sardar did not understand what her father told her. Here we have Sardar as the subject, did not is the auxiliary verb, then we have the main verb understand, then we have what her father told her is the clause of WH question. What her father, this is the subject of the W, then or the clause of it, sometimes we say it, told is the verb, her is the object. Or sometimes maybe I have that with the clause. Sam knew that you are not telling him the whole story. This is whole act as object for Sam. Same thing here if we look back to the sentences. This is the object for the sentences here. Sam is the subject, knew is the verb, that you are not telling him the whole story is the object for the sentences. Let's see here, we have subject, auxiliary verb, object, simple sentences. Sarah is here since the early morning. Sarah is the subject, is the auxiliary verb, which is acting as the main verb of the sentences. Here, since the early morning, acting as object for the sentences here. Sometimes maybe we could have, instead of auxiliary verb, we have action verb as it is here. We have subject, action verb, object. We have Sarah works for a very famous company. Sarah is the subject, works is the verb, which is action verb, sometimes say main verb, all of them the same meaning. For a very famous company is the object of the preposition for, you could sometimes say compliment. Sarah does work for a very famous company. Here we saying Sarah is working there, but the difference is here we only adding more stress on it. It means making sure 100% that Sarah is working for the company. That's the reason we're saying Sarah does work for a very famous company. Sarah is the subject, does is the auxiliary verb here, then we have the main verb work. Same thing here, for a very famous company, the object of the preposition, or you could say prepositional phrase. If we look to the sentences here, Sarah studies math at the Hawk University. Sarah is my subject. Studies is the verb, which is acting as the main verb. Math is the object. And then at the Hawk University is the complement for the sentences we have there. In English, we have different kind of sentences. Our sentences could be simple sentences, mean only we have one idea. For example, we're talking here, Sam is a student, is finished. We have only one idea, one subject, one verb, and then one object. Maybe we have compound sentences are constructed of more than one independent clauses. If we look back here, this sentence is independent sentences. But here we have more than one. For example, if you look here, Azad came to our party. This is one independent sentences. Then we have the second sentences also. If we take it from this part, it's independent. Like his father went to a funeral is complete thought. But we have two ideas with each other. If we connect it, we have to have a connector, which we use but. Then we have Azad. If we leave the sentences like this, like only this part, then we say, but his father went. Why? We need to know more information than because we have here but in the front of the sentences. If we delete this, like this, it's not accepted because we will run on sentences. Here we have one subject, then second subject, then we have one verb, then the second verb, then we're gonna be conflict of idea. It's not accepted, then we have to change it. This instead we put back again but to solve the problem of the two subject and then two verbs. We could have complex sentences are constructed of subordinating clauses and an independent clause. I mean two, we have clause and also independent clause. For example, if you look at these sentences, Azad did not come to our party because his father wants him to study for the exam. If we look to this part, this is independent. It's perfectly done. And then we have the second part. If we look to this part also, it's independent. But we added two independent to each other. Then we have to have connector with connecting the two sentences together. That's we call them complex sentences. Then we have the third one. We call them compound complex. My apology. Compound and also complex sentences are constructed of at least two independent clauses and at least having one more subordinating clauses. If you look to these sentences, I say, the little boy cried. If we leave it like this, with no other sentences, it's gonna stand alone. It's independent sentences. And then if we have the other sentences here also, if we delete because, and then we have to change the sentences to the capital, because whenever we start with a sentences in English, we have to start with the capital letter. If we look to this, the dog scared him. This is also an independent sentence because we have subject, we have the verb, we have the object. Same thing with the first sentences. The little boy is the subject, then we have cried, which is the verb of the sentence for the sentences. If you remember, we said sometimes we could have a subject and verb. Sometimes we don't need object in some sentences. And if we look here to the third sentences, the dog owner apologized right away. This is perfect independent sentences. We have the subject, more than one word, the dog owner. Then we have the verb, apologize is the verb, then which is the main verb, then right away acting as the object for the sentences. Now we have 1, 2, 3 independent sentences connected to be one sentences as like this. Let's go back again. If we look now, we have all of them as one sentences. How we know it's one sentences? Anytime when you look to your sentences, you start with the capital letter, then at the end of the sentences we put period, or sometimes we call it full stop, or in some cases we have question mark. Then we have to use punctuation. Now look sentences again. The little boy cried because the dog scared him. Then continue the third idea, and the dog owner apologized right away. We have 3 ideas connected in one sentences. Okay, for here we are done. Let's keep talking.